Hello all! So as I had kind of expected given the timing, Ace Combat 8 was announced at the Game Awards. It's been now a good, 6 years since Ace Combat 7 back in 2019. So that's pretty much a full modern game dev cycle. Now normally, I wouldn't just dump initial thoughts on a thing. I prefer contemplating and, saying something a bit more meaningful. However, considering I did a nearly 6-hour series of videos on it, I think I've paid my damn dues when it comes to Ace Combat. It was one of the big motivators to get me started making YouTube videos, mainly, how bad 7 was. So here we go, my initial thoughts. Will it turn out good? Given what we were shown, will it be worth a buy? Yes, this is just Jet Fighter Ornithomancy. So, I'm gonna alternate. 8 good, hopeful things, and 8 bad, possibly going to be shit things about Ace Combat 8, based on the initial trailer. Number 1, possibly good. From the initial trailer, the bad guys are Sotoa. This is good. Sotoa is a blank slate we know pretty much nothing about. This is good as it means 8 will have to expand the scale of Ace Combat, at least a bit. Now, most AC factions are not really that deep. Ace Combat in general works on a lot of implied depth, giving the player just enough small hints that they can sort of project or roleplay the faction into being. So the new stuff here is good. Possibly bad, number 1. Sotoa kinda looks like they're just gonna pivot around Russian jets again. I'm sorry, Mr. Kono, and to the good folks at PA. But I think their brains are kind of stuck in the Cold War. The Su-57 just doesn't have the same veneer of cool, unknown antagonist energy, because neither does Russia. But AC isn't real, Argon. It isn't IRL. Yeah, it kinda is. Look at the raw amount of Top Gun in this bitch. The Su-37 was, Char's custom Zaku tier of a baddie for the same reason. Personally, I'd just make, Sotoa use PLAAF planes for what should be very obvious reasons. But Argon, what about plane licenses? What about copyright? Man, who cares? You know, and I know, that some of the shit the Chinese are flying right now, it looks a little inspired, to be mild. So I don't see why we have to have a fictional game, respect that for some reason. Number 2, possibly good thing. Gameplay-wise, we do see briefly, possibly wingman commands, if the D-pad in this screenshot means anything. As well, it's possible that we are getting, for the first time, multiple special weapons. So, a returning feature and a new feature. But, number 2, possibly bad, as we have had many games with wingmen, if they ain't well done, there's not much novelty here, unless you're a Zoom-millennial who never played those earlier titles. Much like Ace Combat 7, if it's your first time, it may be wow. If it ain't, then it might be bad, no wow. As to multiple special weapons, initially this seems cool, as it means the player can now bring, something for everything. However, on the downside, multiple special weapons do reduce the replay value on levels, as I mentioned in my Project Wingman video. If you can do everything in one go, this means multiple goes are less attractive. Still, this could be neat, as it's never been in an AC game. Number 3, possibly good. The translated interviews mention clouds again, and maybe dynamic weather. This was a major feature 7 was supposed to use, but given how big a role they played, it was kind of axed during 7's shitshow development. It just wasn't lining up with how levels were supposed to turn out. But now it's back, and maybe it could be good. If total random generation Borks level design again, I'd be happy with just 3 to 5 pre-generated cloud layouts, which kind of get randomly chosen per mission. I think that could be neat. Number 3, possibly bad. Katabuchi is writing the story again. I'm sorry, but the whole it's the last carrier setup is kind of getting a bit old at this point. I know he mentioned it's kind of one of his favorite setups, but we've had this in 5, and we had it a bit again in 7, so, like wingman commands, unless it's done well, it won't really wow me. Worse yet, it looks like the continuous POV setup is gonna make you spend a lot of time with the characters and ship in question. So, walking into rooms, hearing conversations, being around characters. But if that all sucks, oh boy, you're gonna be forced to eat it up. Number 4, possibly good, however. The carrier being an ancient refit of an Essex class means it'll probably have a lot of personality. More than that, the 0079, the Gundam show, showed how a continuous home base also means consistent characters in the background. Wolfenstein and Front Mission's later games made use of this kind of similar setup off the top of my head. And considering one of 7's biggest issues was too many characters, this does kind of fix that. Number 4, possibly bad. Shikoshi, as Katabuchi is writing the story, it has at best a 50-50 of turning out interesting. If it doesn't focus on drones and sticks with what Katabuchi is good at, i.e. vaguely World War II-esque narrative tropes, it could work. However, as the central theme, it kind of seems to be built around manufacturing a super ace. So this does involve very modern concepts of social media and propaganda in the social media sphere. And, if the last story was Old Man Yells at X, this may fail to make the most of that. Kind of leading to number 5, possibly good. That setup, though, is legit an interesting one. The Wings of Thieves is clearly based on the Ghost of Kiev, a pop culture social media buzz thing from the ongoing war in Ukraine. That, for those who may have missed it, was essentially just making up a super ace pilot as a propaganda icon. Now, in a world like Strange Reel, where we now have dozens of one such super pilots, this mixes to make an interesting idea and a very interesting setup for a plot. Neat potential for missions and story also follow. Your entire squadron may be acting as essentially war influencers, managed by this scummy producer-type guy as a means of propaganda power to drive the war. This could be, if, critically done, if done well, very interesting for some ideas. Soredemo, possibly bad, number 5, ultimately Ace Combat is hamstrung by this premise a bit. All the games pivot around the player being an insane power fantasy. The games where they just don't really acknowledge it all that much usually end up also being the ones where it's done the best. It's something in the background, like in 4 and in 6. So Ace Combat 8 would have to get really, really clever to figure out a good way to simultaneously build up and undercut the player in this way. Otherwise, it ends up being kind of boring. The player just is a special guy. You're the player, you're a special guy. There's not much tension there. However, it has been done in Japanese media well, ironically, once again, in Gundam, where Amuro and the RX-78's efforts straddle this fine line of, at times, both feeling like the decisive battle-turning solo protag hero, and also being a cog in a much bigger military effort, whose actions are more useful as a distraction or resource drain on Zeon's war machine, than as a singularly, winner of the war. Number 6, possibly good, it's fucking Top Gun! Yeah, with no surprise whatsoever, Ace Combat 8 is aping the shit out of the last Top Gun : movie for theaters. People, especially younger people, seem to dislike this in the fandom. But, come on. It's Anvil Smasher 8. Of course it's gonna ape the critically acclaimed Anvil Man movie. Of course it is. Now, I see this, though, as a good thing because Top Gun Maverick was basically one big Ace Combat series of missions. So this just kinda works. The interviews focus on, the cockpit camera to show off characters, as they did in that film, and that's cool. Also, good for the Superbug. The FA-18E-F is getting its time to shine. I give that a thumbs up. I do like that plane. Number 6, possibly bad, Dadashi. This is also part of the focus on deepening the world of Ace Combat, which the translated interviews mention. Now, I get why. These days, the appeal of the cool jet, it's still there. But the appeal of Ace Combat is heavily eaten into by the modern ease of access to high-end and low-end flight sims. If one of AC's original appeals was, you are the flying jet guy, well, War Thunder gives you all of that essentially for free. all the super mech autism individual subplane model stuff that you could possibly lose yourself in, and will definitely lose hours grinding in, is there. Huge rosters of every single thing and every single plane and every single tank. And if you are a loser who loves minutia, DCS is also basically easier than ever to get running. You can just be in the cockpit of a fighter jet, and I hope you like binding macros and buying a HOTAS and definitely getting some head tracking going, but if you do all that, it's pretty great. So, with those two in mind, what was kind of really left for Ace Combat at this point? You know, it has its aesthetic, visual, and audio and graphic design, but you're kind of just left with the narrative as the strongest thing which separates it apart. So, you know, you've got the pew-pew, kind of fun, but not really simmed gameplay. You've got the cool visuals, and yeah, now, story as the things that Ace Combat can give you specifically. Now, this possibly becomes a bad thing when, as mentioned before, if the story is shit, you are dragged over it like hot coals, because it's the focus now. Number 7. Possibly good, more than likely good, it's pretty well phoned in at this point, is the music will be great. 7 was strong here as well, and in terms of visual and graphic design, it'll probably also be very good. This is, after all, Kono's background as a director. You know, 7 showed that even if wrapped around a turd, the packaging can still be very cool. 8 will definitely carry this on. Also, we're getting a red HUD, because, why not? Number 7, possibly bad though. I didn't mention this before, but we still have the post-stall maneuver as a focal point. I don't think this is, like, weird given the DNA of Ace Combat on its own, but Project Wingman's system was kinda just way more fun and less stiff. Hopefully PA just rips that one out wholesale and slaps it into 8. Number 8, possibly good. We are now getting very, very close to Ace Combat 3's bit of the timeline, and it would be neat to see something show up from that, preferably downplayed and, you know, in the background. It's outside of Katabuchi's really very limited writing wheelhouse to do that. You know, he likes old stuff, he's a fucking Japanese boomer. The stories that he writes are basically World War II fan fiction with some shit sprinkled on. But the 7 DLCs seem to be firmly in the direction of acknowledging 3 with general resources, so given that 8 is set in 2029, you know, some new comm stuff would be neat. But if there's none, that's also fine. And finally, number 8, possibly bad, any mention of Belkins or Belka. Now, this doesn't show up in the trailer, which is great. And also, any pacifism fucking crap. I don't want to play another AC game where all the evil people are evil down to, like, a 14-year-old Filipino Gundam Seed fan's notion of morality and war. The meme still fucking sucks. And ethnic essentialism, you know, saying certain groups are more war-prone as a cop-out for motivation or casus belli is very laughable and tone-deaf, and is especially a rich thing to listen to Japanese people out of everyone tell you about. I will hit Katabuchi on the car if I see it again. So, there you go. I give Ace Combat 8, as you can probably guess, a 50-50 shot of being a good Ace Combat game, which, to be fair, is much higher than 7's chances. You know, it carries a lot of crap over, but it also could do some new, interesting stuff. They're putting a lot of focus on the narrative, but that also means they have to really, you know, carry through for it to be worthwhile. So with that, sorry to the Shingu fans, that vid is absolutely coming up next, and see you in that one.